She never knew him, never even knew humans still walked the stars, until the night fire rained from the sky, and he crashed into her world, broken, hunted, yet unyielding. She should have left him to die. But in saving him, she doomed herself, because now every shadow hides an enemy. Every star burns with a price on his head, and the moment she swore to keep him alive was the moment the galaxy turned against her. Night had been silent until the sky tore apart. A roar, unlike thunder, rolled across the valley, shaking the ground and waking every soul in the village. Arya ran out into the cold night air, her bare feet sinking into the damp soil. She looked up and froze. A streak of fire cut through the stars, burning brighter than any comet she had ever seen. It screamed as it descended, trailing sparks that lit the heavens. Her people gathered behind her, whispering in fear, for they believed the sky belonged to gods and monsters, not mortals. And yet the fire did not vanish. It fell closer, crashing beyond the ridge with a sound that made the earth itself groan. The elders begged the villagers to stay inside, to lock their doors and pray. But Arya could not look away. Something inside her chest pulled her forward, something stronger than fear. Against the warnings, she walked into the night, following the smoke that curled against the stars. Her heart pounded with each step, for she knew this was no falling star. She climbed the rocky ridge, breath burning in her throat, until she stood above the crash site. What she saw stole the air from her lungs. In the middle of the crater lay a broken machine unlike anything her world had ever known. Its metal hull glowed red, cracked and torn, hissing steam into the night. Sparks danced like fireflies from wires she could not name. At the center, half buried in the dirt, was a man. His armor was scorched, his face pale with blood and dust, yet his chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. A human, flesh and bone, not spirit or beast. Arya stumbled closer, her mind reeling. Her people told stories of humans, of their wars, across the stars, but they were legends, myths to frighten children. No one believed they still existed, and yet here he was, lying broken in the dirt before her. She knelt beside him, unsure if she should touch him. His eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes sharp and weary, filled with pain yet refusing to close. He tried to speak, but his voice was nothing more than a rasp. She leaned closer and caught fragments of words, strange yet familiar. He was asking for help. Arya's hands trembled as she reached for him, then pulled back. To help him would mean defying the elders, the laws even, the gods, but to leave him, she could not. Something about his presence, the way he clung to life when he should already be gone, made her heart ache. She tore a strip from her cloak and pressed it to a wound at his side. Though her strength could do little against the damage he had suffered, then the ground shook again. Not from the crash, but from something coming. She turned her head and saw lights in the sky, colder than fire, moving with purpose. Ships, not of her people, not of her world. They descended like hunters drawn to wounded prey. Fear coiled in her stomach as she realized they were searching for him. This man, this stranger from the sky, was not only wounded, he was hunted. And if they found him here, they would burn everything around him to ash. Arya pressed her hand against his shoulder. "You cannot stay here," she whispered, though she knew he could barely hear. She slipped her arm beneath him, struggling to lift his heavy frame. He groaned in pain, his head falling against her shoulder, but she would not stop. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, but something stronger held her fast. She dragged him out of the crater, each step a battle against his weight and her trembling legs. Behind her, the broken machine hissed louder, flames licking its sides, until it collapsed in on itself with a deafening roar. The night lit up as if the sun had returned, throwing shadows across the valley. The villagers would see it. The hunters would see it. She had no time. The man's breathing grew shallow as she pulled him into the cover of the trees. His blood stained her arms, warm against her skin, but she did not falter. "Stay alive," she begged, though she did not know why. Perhaps it was madness. Perhaps it was fate. But she knew one thing with terrifying certainty: his survival now tied to hers. The lights in the sky grew brighter, their hum filling the air like a swarm of insects. Arya pressed her back against a tree, holding him close, and stared upward. The ships descended with a precision that spoke of war. Their searchlights pierced the forest, scanning the ground. She held her breath, her body trembling with exhaustion. If they found her, if they saw him, there would be no mercy. She dared not move, dared not whisper. Only the pounding of her heart betrayed her. The man stirred against her shoulder, whispering a word she did not understand. His hand reached weakly toward hers, as though pleading. And in that moment, as their fingers touched, Arya felt something pass between them. Not words, not thought, but a weight, heavy with meaning. He carried a secret so great it had brought fire from the sky and death to his doorstep. And now, by saving him, she carried it too. The searchlight swept past, the hum of engines fading for a breath. Arya used the moment to pull him deeper into the woods, her body screaming in pain but her spirit refusing to break. She did not know who he was or why the stars burned to see him fall. All she knew was that the galaxy itself seemed to turn in. This single moment, and she stood at the center of it. The stranger from the sky had landed in her world. And nothing would ever be the same again. The forest held its breath as Arya dragged the wounded man deeper into its shadows. Every step tore at her strength, yet she refused to let him go.
Ow.
His weight pressed down on her shoulders like stone, his armor scraping her skin raw, but her will was iron. Behind them, the hum of ships rolled over the treetops, beams of white light searching every crack in the darkness. The hunters did not give up. They circled, patient as predators, waiting for the prey to stumble. Arya's lungs burned, her legs shook. She stumbled against roots and rocks, but still she pulled him forward. She did not know where safety lay her. Village was too close, and the hunters would surely burn it if they caught his trail. She thought of the caves beyond the river, hidden where the cliffs met the sea. Few dared to go there, for the tide swallowed them when storms rose. But for now, it was the only place she could think of. The man stirred again, his eyes fluttering. Open. In the dim light, they glowed faintly, reflecting the strange stars that had carried him here. He tried to speak, his lips moving with broken words she could not understand. His breath rattled, heavy with pain, yet his hand reached toward her again. Clutching her wrist as if to anchor himself to life, Arya swallowed hard. She wished she could tell him to rest, to save his strength, but she feared silence was all. They had to keep them hidden above the ship's pass once more. Their engines rumbled like thunder, shaking leaves from the branches. A sharp beam of light pierced through the canopy, striking the earth only paces away. Arya froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the ground glowed beneath the hunters. Gaze, she pressed the man down, shielding him with her body, willing the shadows to swallow them whole. The beam lingered, sweeping side to side, and for a moment she thought it would catch her. Then, slowly, it drifted away. She did not breathe until the forest darkened again. Only then did she pull him upright, though her arms screamed with the effort. She pushed forward until the faint sound of rushing water reached her ears. The river. Relief surged through her chest, though it was short-lived. The man's body sagged against her. His strength was failing faster now, his breath shallow, his eyes half-closed. If he slipped into darkness, she feared he would not return. When they reached the riverbank, the moonlight revealed the state of his wounds. Blood seeped through his armor, staining the earth black. Arya dropped to her knees, panic clutching at her throat. She pressed her hands to the bleeding, but it was no use. He needed more than she could give. Her people knew healing, herbs, salves, and bindings. Yet even the best of them could not mend wounds carved by fire and steel. The man's lips moved again, forming a single word, this time soft, broken, but clear. A name, not his own, but something else. She could not understand it, yet it sent a chill through her. His gaze locked on hers, desperate, urgent, as though that one word carried the weight of entire worlds. He tried to say more, but blood choked the sound. Arya gripped his hand, whispering fiercely, "Stay alive. Do you hear me? Stay." She did not know why she said it, but the thought of him slipping away here in her arms filled her with a fear she had never known. The roar of engines returned, louder now, closing in. The ships had found the crater. It would not be long before they spread their search wider. Arya had no choice. She looked to the river, the current fast and merciless. If she could get him across, the caves would be within reach. If not, she tightened her grip on him. "Hold on," she whispered, though she doubted he could hear. She pulled him into the water, gasping at the icy bite. The current seized them instantly, dragging them downstream. Arya clung to him with every ounce of her strength, her arms burning, her chest screaming for air. Branches scraped her skin as the river battered them against rocks. But she held on, teeth clenched, heart roaring louder than the water. At last, the river spat them out onto the shore near the cliffs. Arya coughed, dragging the man up onto the wet sand. The tide whispered against the rocks, hiding them from sight. She collapsed beside him, shaking with exhaustion, yet her gaze never left his face. His eyes were closed now, his breath shallow. Ow! But he was alive. For the moment, the engines rumbled overhead once more, but faint now, distant. For the first time since the sky had torn open, Arya felt a sliver of safety. She lay on the sand, soaked and trembling, her hand still gripping his as if letting go would mean losing everything. Above them, the stars stretched endless and cold. She stared at them with wide, fearful eyes, realizing her life had changed forever. The stranger had come from those stars, and now the hunters searched the skies for him. She had no answers, no understanding of the war that must have brought him here. But she knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. By saving him, she had tied herself to his fate, and whatever hunted him would soon hunt her too. The caves loomed ahead like the mouth of some sleeping beast, black and unwelcoming, yet Arya knew they were the only place left. Her body ached from dragging the stranger this far, her arms raw from stone and water, but she refused to stop. Each breath he took was weaker than the last. If she slowed now, he would slip away forever. The air grew colder as she stepped inside. Moisture dripped from the stone ceiling, echoing into the deep darkness. The waves crashed against the cliffs, outside, masking any sound of pursuit, but Arya knew the hunters would not give up. They were searching even now. They would scour every corner of this world until they found him. Until they found her. She laid the man down on a flat stone, brushing wet hair from his face. His skin was pale, his chest rising shallowly. She pressed her ear to his lips, hearing the faint rasp of breath. Relief trembled through her, but it was fragile. His wounds still bled beneath the broken armor. Arya tore strips from her cloak and pressed them against the gashes, binding as tightly as she dared. The blood slowed, but not enough. Her hands shook, her thoughts spiraled. She had saved lives before in her village, but never like this. Never someone who had fallen from the stars. She whispered to herself, forcing calm. He will live. Has to live. As she worked, she studied him more closely. His armor was unlike anything she had seen, scarred metal fused with strange black material that seemed alive. Shifting faintly with his breaths, symbols etched along its surface glowed softly, pulsing like fading embers. His body bore scars, too, not just from this battle, but from many before. He was no ordinary man. He was a warrior. A sound cut through the cave, a faint whine, mechanical, sharp. Arya's heart clenched. She crouched low, holding her breath. The sound grew louder, closer, echoing along the stone. Then she saw its small machines, no bigger than birds, floating into the cave. Their eyes glowed red, scanning the ground. The hunters had sent them. Arya's pulse raced. She looked back at the stranger. He was too weak to move, too broken to defend himself. It was up to her. She grabbed a jagged rock, pressing her back against the shadows. One drone floated nearer, its beam of light cutting across the walls. She waited, her breath sharp in her throat. When it drifted close enough, she struck. The rock smashed into the machine, sparks exploding into the dark. It fell with a sharp metallic cry. The others spun instantly, beams flashing toward her. She ducked behind a pillar of stone as blasts of searing light scorched the wall. Heat burned her skin, but she did not stop. She hurled another stone, shattering. A second machine, the remaining drone, buzzed louder, its weapon charging. Arya's eyes darted to the stranger. His hand twitched, reaching weakly toward his side. She saw the faint gleam of metal, their weapon, half hidden beneath his armor. Her heart pounded as she crawled toward it, beams slicing inches from her head. Her fingers closed around the weapon. It was heavy, humming faintly with a power she did not understand. The drone swooped toward her. Without thinking, she raised the weapon and pulled the trigger. A flash of light erupted, bright and furious, cutting the drone in two. Its pieces clattered to the stone floor, sparks hissing out. The cave fell silent again, save for her ragged breathing. Arya lowered the weapon slowly, staring at it in awe and terror. She had never seen such power, felt alive in her hands, thrumming through her arms. She dropped it beside him, her chest still heaving. When she looked down, his eyes were open, faint, weak, but watching her. For the first time, she thought she saw the shadow of a smile flicker across his face. His lips moved, whispering words she could not understand, but his gaze told her enough. Gratitude. Trust. Arya swallowed hard, forcing herself to steady. She sat beside him, whispering fiercely, "You are not dying here, not while I breathe." Yet even as she said it, fear gnawed at her. The drones would not have come alone. The hunters knew he was near. They would come in greater numbers with fire and fury enough to scour the caves. She could not face them alone. Outside, thunder rolled across the sea, but it was not thunder. It was engines, dozens of them, tearing through the night sky. The hunters were closing in. The world shook with their power. Arya tightened her grip on his hand, her heart roaring against her ribs. She had tied her fate to his. And now, in the depths of this cave, with the enemy storming closer, she realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The ground trembled beneath Arya's feet as the engines roared overhead. The sound rattled through the cave walls, shaking dust and fragments of stone loose from the ceiling. The stranger stirred faintly beside her, his face pale, his body still, too broken to rise. Yet even in his weakness, his eyes were sharp, alive with something more than pain. He knew what those engines meant. He had seen war chase him across the stars, and now it had found him here. Arya pressed a trembling hand to his chest, whispering, "Stay still. I will not let them take you." But her words felt hollow against the thunder outside. These hunters were no small band of machines. This was an army. And she was just one woman with blood-stained hands, trapped in a cave with a dying warrior from the sky. The sound grew louder. A beam of white light cut across the cliffside, searching. Shadows darted across the cave entrance. Arya pulled the man deeper inside, her heart racing, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She knew the tunnels twisted farther into the mountain. She also knew what awaited deeper within. Darkness without end, paths that swallowed men whole.
Ow.
No one from her village dared to enter. Some said the mountain itself was cursed.
Ow.
She had no choice. She slid her arm under the stranger's shoulders, hauling him upright. His body was heavy, his weight almost too much, but desperation gave her strength. He groaned, his head lolling against her shoulder, his breath brushed against her ear, faint but steady. She whispered fiercely, "Just a little farther." Step by step, she pulled him into the deeper tunnels. The roar of engines outside grew sharper, joined now by the sound of metal striking stone. Boots, dozens of them. The hunters had landed. Arya stumbled, nearly falling beneath the man's weight. Her chest burned with each breath, still she pressed on, dragging him through the dark. The glow from his broken armor lit their way faintly, strange symbols pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. She found herself glancing at the light, clinging to it as though it were the only thing keeping her from being swallowed whole by the mountain. Behind them, voices echoed harsh, mechanical, barking commands in a language she did not know. Light swept across the walls as the hunters advanced, methodical, unrelenting. The chase had begun. Arya pulled the man into a narrow crevice, pressing him against the stone as beams passed just beyond. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her breath loud in her ears. The hunters moved closer. One paused, its light falling across the floor where drops of blood marked their trail. The machine knelt, scanning. Then its head turned slowly toward their hiding place. Arya's muscles froze. The stranger's hand twitched against hers, his lips moving faintly. She leaned closer, trying to catch his words. His voice was broken, a whisper torn by pain, but she heard enough. Weapon. Belt. Her eyes darted down. His hand rested weakly against his side, where strange metallic shapes were strapped. She fumbled quickly, pulling free a small device unlike any she had seen. It hummed faintly, its surface alive with shifting light. She had no time to question. The hunter stepped closer, its weapon raised, its red eye glowing. Arya pressed the device against the stone floor and squeezed. A surge of light exploded outward, flooding the tunnel with blinding brilliance. The machine screamed as its systems sparked and failed, collapsing in a shower of sparks. The others shouted, their lights whipping toward the blast. Arya grabbed the stranger and ran. The tunnel twisted sharply, plunging them into darkness again. Her lungs burned, her legs shook, but she did not stop. She could not stop. The sound of the hunters filled the air behind them, furious and relentless. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Strange whispers seemed to curl through the stone, a low hum that rattled her bones. At first she thought it was her imagination, a trick of fear. But then the stranger stirred, his eyes widening faintly, his lips whispering something she could not understand. It was not fear in his expression, it was recognition. They turned another corner, and the tunnel opened suddenly into a vast cavern. Arya stopped, her breath catching. Before them stretched an ancient chamber, its walls carved with towering symbols glowing faintly in the dark. Massive pillars of stone rose into the shadows above, wrapped in strange metal veins that pulsed. Faintly with light, at the center of the chamber stood a structure unlike anything she had seen, in an archway of black stone. Humming softly, its surface rippling like water, though no wind touched it. The stranger's eyes locked on it. For a moment, strength returned to his face, sharp and fierce. His voice rasped out, clear despite his broken body. Gate. Arya stared at him, her mind reeling. This place was no cave. It was something far older, something built not by her people, but by his. The hunters' voices grew louder in the tunnels behind them. Arya tightened her grip on his arm, her body trembling. She had led him into a place beyond her understanding. But there was no turning back. Not now. The air thrummed with power, the ancient archway pulsing as though it sensed his presence. Arya's breath quickened, her heart hammering as the hunters closed in. She did not know what this gate was, or where it led. But she knew one thing, with absolute clarity. If they stayed here, they would die. And if they stepped through, their world would never be the same again. The cavern pulsed with a strange life, every symbol carved into the stone glowing brighter, as though awakened by the stranger's breath. Arya held him upright, her body aching from the weight, her mind spinning from the enormity of what stood. Before her, the gate loomed like a black mirror, its rippling surface humming with a sound she felt in her bones. It was alive. The stranger's hand shook as he reached toward it, his voice raw but urgent. "We must go." Arya's throat tightened. Beyond the gate was not her world. It was not the mountain she had grown up beneath, nor the stars she had only ever seen as distant lights. Beyond lay something she could not imagine. Yet behind them came the hunters. The sound of their boots on stone echoed closer, louder, accompanied by the mechanical grind of weapons charging. Her fear snapped, like brittle glass. With a cry, she threw her arm around the stranger and pulled him forward. Together, they staggered into the gate. The world tore apart for a heartbeat. Arya felt herself unmade, her body stretched thin across endless distance, her mind pulled through rivers of light. Stars burned around her, thousands of them, spinning, passed faster than thought. Voices whispered through the void, voices that were not human, not alive, yet filled with memory. Her heart screamed in terror, and then silence. Arya fell to her knees on cold metal, gasping. The air was sharp, dry, different. Around her, the chamber stretched impossibly wide, filled with machines that blinked and hummed. Strange windows of light hung suspended in the air, filled with symbols that shifted faster than her eyes could follow. The stranger collapsed beside her, his broken body trembling, her breath shuddered out. She had crossed into another world. The sound of the hunters did not fade. The gate behind them rippled once more, and shadows moved within it. They had followed. The stranger forced himself up on one elbow, his face twisted with pain, but his eyes burning. He pulled something from his armor, a shard of metal, no larger than a blade. With a hiss of breath, he pressed it into Arya's hands. Defend. Arya's fingers shook as she gripped it. The weapon was alive, its surface warming. Beneath her touch, pulsing faintly as though it recognized her. Fear tightened her chest, but something else stirred beneath it. A heed. A strength. The hunters burst through the gate. They came in a flood of steel and light, their weapons raised, their red eyes burning. Arya rose to her feet, the blade humming in her grip. For one frozen heartbeat, she felt the weight of the choice. Before her, run and hide, as she had always done, or stand. Her voice was low, trembling but fierce. Not this time. The first hunter lunged. Arya slashed. Light exploded from the blade, tearing through metal like cloth. The machine screamed as sparks burst from its chest, collapsing in a heap of fire and smoke. The others paused, their eyes locking on her, recalculating. Arya's chest heaved, her own shock flooding through her. She had struck once, and the mountain girl she had been was gone. Something new burned in her veins. The stranger's voice rasped from behind her. Again, she tightened her grip and struck again, and again. Each movement unleashed a storm of light, the weapon carving through steel as though it obeyed her will. The hunters fell, one after another, the cavern filling with the sound of battle. Arya's body ached, her arms burned, but she did not falter. When the last hunter fell, silence returned. Smoke drifted across the chamber, the hum of machines. Echoing softly in the distance, Arya stood in the wreckage, the blade trembling in her hand, her breath ragged. She turned slowly toward the stranger. He was watching her, his eyes bright despite his broken body. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his lips curved faintly into something almost like a smile. Warrior. The word sent a shiver through her. She had never thought of herself as such. Yet here she stood, surrounded by fallen enemies, holding a weapon not of her world. And deep within, she knew there would be no turning back. The stranger's strength faltered. He slumped heavily against the floor. Arya rushed to his side, her fear returning. His blood still seeped, his body still broken. She pressed her, hand to his shoulder, desperate. Stay with me, please. His voice was faint, barely more than a breath. Not much time. They will send more. Arya's head snapped toward the gate. Already its surface rippled faintly as though something on the other side clawed to break through. Her heart pounded. If more came, she could not fight them all. It's not like this. The stranger's hand gripped her wrist with sudden strength, his eyes locking on hers. You must choose. Stay in this world, or run. The chamber trembled as the gate flared with light. Shadows began to form in its depths. More hunters, or death. Arya's breath caught in her throat. She had stepped into a place beyond her world, fought enemies she did not understand, and stood beside a man who had fallen from the sky. She had taken one step across the line that divided fear from fire. Now, standing in the glow of the gate as war threatened to spill through once more, she realized the truth. There was no running, and if she chose to stay, the stars themselves would burn before she gave him up. The chamber shook as the gate behind them roared alive, its black surface rippling like a storm at sea. Arya's pulse thundered in her ears. She could see shapes pressing against it, monstrous shadows waiting to break through. She clutched the humming blade tighter, her chest heaving as smoke from the fallen hunters curled around her feet. The stranger's voice cut through the chaos, raw but commanding. "Move now." Arya hesitated only a breath before pulling his arm across her shoulders. He was heavy, his body broken, yet every step he forced out with her help carried urgency. They stumbled deeper into the chamber, past the floating screens of light, past machines that hummed with a language she could not read. The air tasted metallic, sharp. Every breath was a reminder that she was no longer in her world. Behind them, the gate burst open. The hunters poured through in a storm of red eyes and steel bodies, their weapons glowing with fire. Arya's heart seized, her legs burning as she half-carried, half-dragged the stranger forward. She could hear the pounding of their steps echoing closer, the hiss of energy building. The stranger raised his arm weakly, pressing his hand against a wall of glowing symbols. The chamber responded, walls shifting, machines roaring to life. Ahead, a circular door cracked open, light spilling through. "There," he whispered. They staggered inside as blasts of light scorched the metal around them. Arya spun, swinging the blade, and another burst of fire cut through the air. Blocked it with trembling arms, sparks flying as the weapon hummed in her grip. For one heartbeat, she locked eyes with the nearest hunter as it advanced, its face cold and empty. Her chest tightened. The door slammed shut before it reached her. Darkness fell for a moment. Then the floor lurched beneath her feet. Arya stumbled, clutching the stranger as the chamber around them shifted. The walls curved into smooth metal, the air humming with strange energy. A low roar rose beneath them, growing louder until it swallowed all sound. Her stomach dropped. She realized with a rush of fear that they were moving. The stranger's lips formed a single word. "Ship." Arya's eyes widened as the walls began to glow faintly, symbols running like rivers of light across every surface. She turned slowly, awe and terror colliding in her chest. They were no longer trapped in a chamber. They were inside something alive, something vast. The ship jolted, violently throwing her to the floor. The stranger groaned, clutching his chest. Arya scrambled to him, but he pointed weakly toward a glowing pillar in the center. "Control. You must." Her throat tightened. She had no idea what he meant. Yet something in the pillar called to her, its light pulsing in rhythm with her racing heart. Hesitant, trembling, she placed her hand against it. The ship responded instantly. Her mind exploded with images. Stars rushing past, oceans of darkness pierced by burning suns, hunters swarming like locusts, whole worlds in chains. She gasped, pulling back, but the pillar's light clung to her hand, refusing to let go. Then she felt it. The ship, its body stretched vast around her, its voice whispering in her bones. It knew her. It accepted her. The stranger's voice rasped weakly from the floor. "You can fly it." Arya's body trembled as she looked toward him, her fear rising like a tide. I don't know how the ship jolted again, harder this time. Through a sudden window of light, she saw them hunter ships. Dozens, sleek, black and glowing with crimson. They were closing in fast, their weapons burning. The stranger coughed, blood at his lips. "You must, or we die." Heart pounded. So hard she thought it would break. She turned back to the pillar, gripping it with both hands, closing her eyes. The ship's voice surged through her, carrying her into motion. Stars blurred as the ship roared forward, engines screaming like thunder. The hunters gave chase. Blasts of fire lit the void, streaks of red tearing past her vision. She flinched, the ship groaning as one blast skimmed its side. Fear clawed at her throat, but she pushed harder, her hands burning against the pillar. She thought of the mountain where she had been born, of the quiet nights she had believed were all she would ever know. She thought of the stranger bleeding on the floor beside her. She thought of the hunters, endless and merciless. Her voice broke in a whisper. I won't let them take you." The ship answered her cry. With a roar, it veered sharply, twisting between fire, diving into the ocean of stars. The hunters pursued, but she could feel the ship's strength, its will. It wanted to survive. It wanted to fight. Light erupted ahead in an asteroid field, jagged and burning with reflected starlight. The hunters surged after her, believing her. Cornered. Arya's breath caught, sweat dripping down her brow.
Ow!
She pressed her hand harder to the pillar. Now the ship obeyed. It twisted, darting through the rocks like a predator through shadows. Hunters smashed against stone, fire blooming in the dark. Arya's body shook as she guided the vessel, her movements instinctive, guided by something deep within. Blast after. Blast skimmed the ship, but she did not falter. One by one, the hunters fell. When the last burst of fire faded, silence swallowed the void. Arya's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, her body trembling from the strain. She stumbled back from the pillar, collapsing to her knees. The stranger's eyes were on her, dim with pain, but filled with something else. Wonder. "You," he whispered, "you are not what I thought." Arya met his gaze, her blade still glowing faintly in her grip. For a moment, the weight of what she had done pressed down on her. She had taken a ship across the stars. She had fought hunters and survived. But her heart gave her no rest. She knew this was only the beginning. And somewhere, deep in the endless dark, more waited. More enemies, more trials. She had stolen one breath of freedom. But now, every hunter in the stars would come for her. The ship tore through the void, faster than Arya's breath could keep pace. Stars streaked across the windows like silver rain, and the hum of the engines deepened into something alive, something that answered not just to the stranger, but to her. She stood at the center of the chamber, her hands pressed against the glowing pillar, every nerve in her body burning with its energy. The ship was no longer a machine. It was part of her now, pulsing with her heartbeat, her anger, her fear, and her growing resolve. Behind her, the stranger leaned against the wall, pale but watching, his eyes burning with both pain and pride. His voice was low, steady, despite the strain. "They've marked us already. The hunters won't stop. They'll call others. Armies, war fleets. All for this ship. And now for you." Arya swallowed hard. She had seen it in the visions the ship forced into her mind. Endless black skies, filled with predator ships, weapons shining like storms, and shadows greater still hiding beyond them. She wanted to tremble, to cry, but her fists clenched instead. "Then we don't run," she said, her voice raw but unshaken. "We fight." The stranger let out a weak, broken laugh. "You speak like a soldier." "I'm not," she said, her jaw tight. "I'm just a girl from a mountain who lost everything. But maybe that's what they should fear, 'cause I've got nothing left to lose." The ship's lights flared as if it had heard her oath and accepted it. A new voice pressed against her mind, sharper this time, louder. Coordinates, signals, enemy movements ahead. Her stomach twisted. They were already closing in. The stranger limped forward, his hand brushing the controls, his voice hoarse. "Expect us to run. They'll think we'll hide in the shadow of a world. That's how they hunt. But if we strike first..." Arya's eyes lifted to him. He was bleeding, his body failing, but his mind was sharper than the blade at her hip. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a commander. A man who had fought wars across the stars and survived. And now, somehow, fate had tied him to her. Her chest tightened. "Then tell me where to strike." He looked at her for a long, silent moment, as if measuring her strength against the storm about to fall. Finally, he nodded. "Open the ships. Weapons. Let it show you, and don't hesitate. Hesitation kills." Arya pressed her hand against the pillar again, and the ship obeyed. Panels along the walls split open, revealing arrays of light and energy, weapons older than her people's. Old as stories, humming with deadly power. She felt their weight in her bones, their fire filling her lungs. And then, like predators, sensing blood, the hunters appeared. Through the viewport, their ships spilled from the dark, sleek and sharp, black against black. They spread in a ring, encircling her, their weapons glowing with hungry fire. Arya's breath caught in her throat.
There were so many.
Too many? They'll crush us, she whispered. The stranger stepped beside her, leaning against the wall. For strength, his voice fierce despite his weakness. It's not if you burn them first. Remember what you told Mule. Fight the stars to keep me, to keep us. Now show them. The hunters moved in, engines screaming. Arya's hands tightened on the pillar. The ship pulsed, its systems aligning with her heartbeat. She didn't know how to fight, not like him, not like a soldier. But she knew how to burn. She had done it before, in the ruins of her world. She had let the fire inside her consume everything. In its path, her eyes narrowed, then let them burn. The ship roared. Beams of light tore across the dark, slicing through the first wave of hunter ships before they could fire. Explosions rippled, flames scattering through the void like dying stars. The ship spun with her movement, weaving between enemy fire with impossible grace. The hunters pressed closer, faster, desperate. But she was faster still. She moved as if dancing, every turn of her body guiding the ship, every pulse of her heart unleashing another strike. One by one the hunters fell, their shadows torn apart. By fire. The stranger stared at her, wide-eyed, as though seeing not a girl, but something far more. You're not just chosen by the ship, he murmured. You were born for this. But the hunters didn't stop. More ships poured from the void, larger now, their weapons bright enough to blind her. The ring closed tighter. Arya's chest heaved, sweat burning her eyes, but her voice rose clear, steady, alive. I'm not afraid anymore. And as the ship burned through the dark, cutting a path through fleets meant to crush them, the truth became clear. She was no longer just a girl from the mountains, no longer a survivor clinging to what little life had left her. She was something new, something the hunters had never expected, something the stars themselves had never seen. She was their war. The stranger's hand gripped the edge of the console. His eyes locked on her, fierce and unblinking. He whispered words meant only for her, words that cut through the roar of battle like a blade. They'll write your name in their fear. And though the void thundered with fire and death, Arya smiled a thin, unyielding smiles. Her whisper rose like a vow to the stars. Then let them remember it.